Hi, it's Sherry Clerges with At 45 Magazine, and we're so excited today to be continuing our Women in Art series. And we have had so much fun over the last months talking with different women who are artists and finding out what makes them tick and what they're doing, what kind of art. And it's been so informative. I am just amazed at the different kinds of art, but I'm also amazed at the many different stories that women have to share. So today I'm with Sherry Klassen from Whistler here on the West Coast in Vancouver, or of BC. And we're so excited to have you, Sherry. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. What an awesome opportunity.
Well, it's wonderful to have you. So we were just talking about the heat wave that we're having here on the West Coast. Now you're a little bit farther in than I am. And what was it, the temperature there yesterday?
I think we broke 30. It was incredible. And the funny thing is, I have a chairlift project for Arts Whistler that I've been working on, and it's really kind of cool. They took recycled cat skinner decommissioned chairlift chairs, and they turned it into an art installation. And there's 15 artists, and we've all worked together with a community group. My group was called The Point. It's an artist-run center, so no pressure. I'm representing a whole bunch of incredible artists, and Whistler is full of incredible artists. It's crazy. So here I am, creating this chairlift piece to represent these artists. And yesterday was the day that I decided to actually go and paint the legs that have been welded onto the bottom to turn it into kind of a park bench. And it was smoking hot. Like, I can't tell you, it was it was ridiculous. And I'm thinking in my head, why did I choose today? But it's a really cool project. They're going to install these chairs along the village stroll in Whistler, and they're all different because they're all different people working with different groups, having a different theme, and they're beautiful. The project's called Lifting the Community, and after the end of the summer, somewhere in the early fall, they're going to auction them off, and the money from the chair sale goes back to the charity.
Oh, that is fascinating.
Yeah, isn't that a great project?
Oh, it is. We'll have to get some pictures to put in the article with it because
Absolutely.
that sounds amazing.
Well, I think they're going to be installed on the stroll next week. So they're going to they have to anchor them to the ground, obviously, because they don't want them tipping over. It's quite amazing that the chairs are actually very tall and narrow.
Ah.
So they've got to anchor those babies down so that when kids are climbing on them or whatever, they don't tip over. But yeah, they're quite striking. It was really neat because right now they're all in a yard together. So when I went to finish my legs, I could see everybody's work, and it was really exciting.
Oh, that sounds phenomenal. Now, did you have trouble yesterday? Because I know sometimes paint is delicate in heat with it being so hot, and on metal too, I imagine.
Yes. Well, I had actually finished my chair completely, and all I was doing was spray painting the legs that were welded on. So, I mean, yes, the paint dried rather quickly. There's a few drips, but it wasn't actually part of what I created. It was more just a functional feature. So I was cutting myself some slack, and I had to get it done because they're getting installed. So,
well, congratulations. That sounds a fabulous project.
Yeah, Arts Whistler does some incredible things. They're a very creative group. I feel fortunate to be so close and be involved with them. There's always something exciting going on, for sure.
So we can see some of the paintings in the background behind you, but what kind of painting, do you specialize in?
Okay, so I would say this is really funny because I was thinking about it. I knew you were going to ask me this question. And I love doing animals. That's my heart is animals. I'm connected to animals, and I do a lot of commissions for people. I've done a lot of pets. I've actually done some portraits or wild animals for people. Like I did a grizzly for a person's 60th birthday for a commission. I just finished not too long ago a commission of painting that a woman had imagined in her mind. And it was her father-in-law who passed away in a farm with their pets that had passed away. And
Oh,
it was a real challenge because I was working from, photos, and obviously it was an imagined farm because it was his dream to retire to a hobby farm.
mm,
So it was all sort of from my imagination, but I did have pictures of, the father-in-law and the animals. So I was able to sort of pull it together, and I was really actually nervous. I didn't know if I had caught what she was intending, but she was absolutely thrilled, and lots of happy tears, and so that was really exciting. But yes, my love is animals, and my style is freestyle.
mm.
So I feel like when I started painting, I was really pushing myself to have a style, and it felt very contrived. And I feel it's almost like your signature. It's something that will change over time. Like if you look back at when you started writing, in grade 3 or whatever it was, and 4, and you start signing your name. And if you looked at your signature now, I know for sure, at least for myself, it doesn't look anything the same. And I feel like art is the same thing. It's like part of yourself. You grow, you change, it changes too. Hopefully you improve. And so I'm letting my style be freestyle. So I'm not going to get stuck in a little box, but I focus on different subjects. And I started the first sort of subject the very first thing I started with was abstraction. And I realized that was way harder than I thought. It looks easy, but to be good at it, I think is very difficult. And then I started painting totem poles because I find them absolutely strikingly beautiful and hauntingly eerie. And I love the stories and the cultural history. However, I have stopped because I don't want to misappropriate anybody's art, and I'm not an Indigenous person, and I don't have permission. So even though I want to so badly, out of respect for our Indigenous people, I've decided not to. So then I moved on to animals, and I've really been focused on birds and animals for the last few years, and humorous animals too. I enjoy trying to catch some kind of a little spirit or a little funny soul showing through.
And with the animals, like I think you showed me some when we first got together today, and people will see it in the article and the profile. But the animals look real, like when you say your style, it is that you're painting something
Yeah.
that looks like that.
Yes, I am definitely, I'm a realist for sure. I'm not like a hyper realist, and I actually try really hard to have some lost edges and be a little bit free, and usually, have a point of focus so that people are, looking towards where I want to look, you want them to look, which would be more real in that area for sure. I've been dabbling as well with some experimental stuff, and I would like to sort of go in a more experimental direction, maybe a little bit impressionistic and a little bit slightly abstracted. not completely abstracted, but slightly abstracted. So.
Well, I know what I see in the freestyle that you're doing, and the pieces that I've seen so far, is you seem to capture a personality in the animal.
That's what I'm trying. That's what I'm trying for sure. So thank you for noticing that. I really do. I really do. And I really believe that all creatures have souls. And I have a fabulous dog that I adopted from the animal shelter up here as a puppy. And I've had him for almost 2 years. And he is so funny. Like he's a comic. Like I say to my friends, if he was a person, you would want to hang out with him and you'd want to go to his parties, because he's just like a gas, and all the neighborhood dogs love him, and he's like so out there. And yeah, it's just, they really are different, every single one. It's amazing.
And do you paint from a picture like often, or just something you see, or?
I've done both now. I almost always use photos for reference, just because it's so much easier. And especially I find for eyes, like eyes, I think are critical. You know, if you don't get the eyes right on a person or an animal, you've missed the boat, in my opinion. So I always have reference photos, but I don't always paint from a picture. Like sometimes, like for example, the commission that I just did, it was completely contrived from my imagination. But of course I had to do some perspective drawing because there was a little cabin in it, and you know, and I had to look at all the pictures of the pets so that I kind of got them right, hopefully, you know. Yeah.
And how did you get into painting? When did you start?
This is funny. So I started about 15 years ago. I had really not done any art in high school or in school. I never drew, I never painted. I just wasn't focused on it at all. I didn't even realize that I had any kind of an artistic bent or talent. But we had a house, my husband and I had a house in North Vancouver that we had been fixing up, and I wasn't happy with any artwork that I had. And I went out looking at art and saw some pieces I loved. And of course they were quite expensive. They were beautiful and they were expensive. And I thought, I could do that. And I went out and I bought some paint and I bought some canvases, and it was a hot mess. It was horrible. It was so bad. Like I can't tell you how bad it was. And then I thought, now I understand why it's expensive. and then but I kept going because there was something about just playing with the paint and putting the paint on the canvas and that process that I really enjoyed. I felt relaxed. I felt focused. I was in the moment. I just found it really soothing, and I just kept playing around, and I kept going and going. And I tried to emulate different artists that I liked their style, or I liked their color choices, and I would try to emulate it. And I mean, it was horrible, all of it, horrible. I don't think I had one canvas that I didn't paint over for the first 2 years that I painted. Like there's layers and layers and layers and layers of paint on every single one. But you know, eventually I started taking a few workshops, like weekend workshops. They do some in Whistler called Art on the Lake. And they have incredible artists from all over the world because everybody wants to come to Whistler. And so I get this opportunity for, you know, 3 days or 2 days to work with these artists, you know, and learn from them. And now I'm working on a painting certificate at Emily Carr. So I'm continuing to sort of move forward, and I'm improving and trying to grow and love it. It's all fabulous.
So when you were a child, did you have an artistic bend or?
Well, you know, it's really funny. I remember distinctly coloring, and my maternal grandmother, I guess I was coloring, I'm imagining it was an apple tree. And I think I was using colors that were not realistic. And I remember my grandmother telling me that that could not be an apple tree because at that time, I don't think they had all the varieties of apples they do now that were available. And she said, you know, the apples have to be red. And I told her I hated her and to go home, which I got in a lot of trouble for. I felt really bad about. I still remember it vividly because she actually did leave. And I think I hurt her feelings terribly. And it was awful. My mom was so mad. But, you know, I think that was my way of, you know, having creativity and not wanting to be suppressed. So I guess at some point I did, but I don't, you know, I wasn't that kid in school that, you know, drew all the time or painted or, you know, went to art classes. That wasn't my jam. So it's a discovery later in life, and I just enjoy it so much.
And do you paint full time, or is that do you have a
Well,
career?
I'm retired, but I am a marriage commissioner. So I do a few weddings, which is
wow.
really love it. It's so fun to be invited into somebody's really special moment, you know? And I do a little bit of, you know, did a little dabble in volunteering here and there, post or pre-COVID a lot.
Yeah.
Will again soon. But yeah, I paint a lot. I paint often, and I paint volume. And I still paint over, you know. I was reading a quote by one of the Impressionists, I'm trying to remember the last name, but it's not, he painted with Monet and Cézanne, but he's not as well known. But he was a very well-known impressionist, and he'd written an article, and he had quoted himself as saying that his work was crap and he was so unhappy with his paintings. And I'm thinking, wow, you know, that's the thing about art. There is never a point, I don't think anyway, where you go, now I'm done. You know, now I've mastered it. Even the masters are still learning and growing and continuing to evolve. And that's one of the things I love about it so much.
I find that so amazing because, you know, in most creative worlds, you have an outcome, and that outcome is almost an extension of who you are. And yet with painters, I hear over and over again how they very seldom get to a point where they're satisfied.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
I
think that's the draw, because there's no ultimate final moment where you go, now I'm completed. Now I've learned everything, because it's the process of, you know, between all of the variables with your, you know, your mediums and your color choices and your subject matters and the way that you express yourself. Like there's so many infinite combinations, and what you know, imagine inside your mind, trying to articulate that through these mediums, it's really challenging. So it might look amazing, but it might not be what you intended, right?
Mm.
So there's that quest, right?
Interesting.
I think so.
So what I notice about your paintings is they're very bright and colorful. So you must be drawn to colors and the use of colors.
I am drawn to color, and I love color, and I love vibrant color. And you know, one thing, and I bet you've heard this from other artists, I hate it when people think that their paintings have to match their living room. I hate that. They don't. Right?
It's almost every artist I've talked to, that's one of the questions that have come up over and over again that people want to ask artists is, oh, you know, my living room's blue and I'm going to find a piece. What should I look for?
Not something blue necessarily, right? Yeah. Well, I think a lot of art collectors, like serious art collectors, they have a different approach. They buy what they love, or they follow an artist they're interested in. But yeah, a lot of us have a tendency to sort of look at our living room or our bedroom, or, you know, and think those colors match nicely.
Yeah.
Right.
So because you're doing a lot of commissions, when people come to you with commissions, do they ask for that? Like, do they say, I want, you know, blues, or do they ever ask that? Like, what do people say when they want something?
Primarily, I've been doing animals. I have done a few children as well, but primarily I've been doing animals, and that actually kind of takes a lot of the color out of the equation when you're doing someone's animal, their pet or their horse, or what, you know, because you try to emulate as close as you can the color of their markings, right? So, you know, I guess I still dabble with the background. I still play around a little bit and throw some color in. And even in my realistic paintings, I push the color a lot, because I'll look at, you know, a picture of a bear and it's kind of shadowy, and I see blue or purple in shadow, and so I push it in that direction. It's not true to life.
Yeah, but it looks true to life. Is that a bear to the one side of you in your background?
Yeah, I have actually, I've got a couple of bears here. Here, I'll show you. We'll take you on a tour.
Oh, great.
There's a really big bear.
Oh, yes, now I see.
He's huge. He's like 7 feet by 4 feet, I think.
Wow.
And then that's one that I've just finished for the Rome Gallery show that's starting in July.
Beautiful.
And yeah, actually, I've got a whole bunch, every spot in my house, I have paintings sitting, drying all over. So yeah.
So he's a purple bear or a blue bear?
He is purple, yeah. And I pushed the yellow green. If anybody's into complementary colors, yellow complements purple. So I've got a yellowy green sort of algae growing on the rocks, seaweed. And that was from a photo taken by my niece. So she was, they went up to Ucluelet, and they had some photos, and I always ask permission. So I have a lot of photographers that help me.
I went to Euclid and we did the bear watching tour. Oh my gosh, that was just, it was the most amazing experience.
I think that, yeah.
Those huge animals, and we came very close to them. I learned a few things that day. Number one was they don't see well, but they hear incredibly well. And so they would say, like, it doesn't matter if you move on the boat, but you have to make sure you're not crinkling or anything like that. And then what we'd see is the bears would be down on the sea, on the ocean side, and there'd be these huge boulders. And the guy explained to us that they were turning the boulders over to look for food underneath or fish. And they just take these, they'd swat them like a cotton ball. And they were
It's incredible.
huge boulders. It was amazing.
They're
Yeah.
so powerful. And in Whistler, we have a lot of resident bears, like a lot. And this time of year, particularly May and June, and then again in the fall, we see bears. I'm not exaggerating. We see bears absolutely weekly, if not daily.
Wow.
Yes, it's actually with the dog, it's actually really tricky. Like you can never, he always has to be on leash every time we leave the house because they're right close to us. Yeah, it's amazing.
Amazing. Well, definitely you guys are in the middle of a mountain range. I mean,
We really are.
it's
We
just a
really are.
fabulous location.
It's incredible. I feel so fortunate every single day.
Yes. So did anybody else in your family, do you have brothers and sisters? Did they paint or?
I have a brother and he doesn't. My father dabbled with painting, but it's kind of funny because he was colorblind, red, green. And he had astigmatism, so he had an issue with depth perception. So his painting exploits did not last very long, but he was extremely musical. He was very creative musically, and he played guitar and he played in a band and he played drums when he was a young man, and he had music in his life mostly for his whole life. So yeah, I think there's some creative spark in there, maybe.
Yes, yes, for sure. So is there a key piece of wisdom that you'd like to share with women who are contemplating a renewed self?
Yes, there is. And this is my big life learning, I think, is get comfortable being uncomfortable. So
Oh,
anytime I've, made a change, I'm always afraid. It's always scary. I'm afraid of, failing, meeting new people, not being liked, rejection, all those things. Like putting out art is the same. Every time you put out art, I'm sure it's the same for writers. I'm sure you feel this. It's an expression of yourself, an extension. And if somebody doesn't like it, it's hard to not take that personally. But every time you do it, you're growing and you're learning and you're scared and you're okay. Like you're afraid, but you get through that. And then you hopefully gain a little bit of wisdom, a little confidence. Maybe somebody loves what you did, and it moves you forward. So yeah, I think if you don't push yourself, you're never going to grow. So that's my big advice. Be uncomfortable.
yes. That's great wisdom because too, when we're getting our careers and our children, our family growing, we're so focused on external forces. And then at some point in time, you realize, you wake up one day, you say, I have some time, it's empty, and maybe I can think about myself. And that's when it really, it can be challenging to step out of yourself because you're not used to doing it
Yes.
on a personal level.
I've had this conversation with several women friends who have, been incredible moms and very focused on their children and nurturing their family. And now they have an opportunity where their kids are launched. They can focus on themselves and they are fearful because they've never done it. So it's scary. Yeah. And I get it.
Yeah.
And even when you've worked your whole life, it's still scary anytime you make a change, right? For sure.
And if we don't make changes now, when are we going to, right? There's a whole big world out there to just rediscover.
It's the truth.
And do you like to read? Have you got a book that's been meaningful in your life?
I love to read. I read all the time, mostly fiction. I love strong female lead characters. But the one book that I think was probably very impactful for me that I would recommend, and I have recommended to a lot of women, is hang on now. It's Peter Bach, and he's the one who wrote all the books about managing money, and I think it's Smart Women Always Are Wealthy. Oh shoot, I have to remember the title, but it's basically teaching women how to manage money, and it's fantastic. I for a while I used to be an investment associate, and I did some financial planning, and it honestly, just learning about managing money for women, especially because so often, particularly married women, give up their power around money to the male in the household, and they don't learn, and they're even afraid of it. And they don't even, some women don't even know, how to pay the bills or something. It's crazy. So, to learn to manage money for yourself and to be responsible for your own finances, I think is huge.
Absolutely. I can tell you from all the research that we've done with the magazine, the number one concern is health, so that you're healthy to enjoy your life that's remaining. Number two is wealth, because so many women are getting to the age where they, divorce, their husband passes away, they want to retire, and the funds are not there.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just starting to think about it. And so, that's why a lot of women past 45 start businesses, because they're needing additional revenue and income.
Absolutely.
So it's a huge thing, a very important. So I'd love when you, in the article, we'll share the exact name of that book.
Terrible. I know I have it written down somewhere. I'll share it with you when I find it. Oh, here we go. Smart Women Finish Rich. And it's David.
Great.
Smart Women Finish. He wrote The Latte Factor. He's written a lot of books, but I found it easy to read, easy to understand. And I actually gave it away to 1 billion people like 15 years ago when it came out, or 20 years ago, whatever it was. But they've updated it to more current Canadian tax laws, etc.
Right.
And it's very relevant. I would recommend it to everybody.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, because I was thinking too, the other thing you were mentioning about women not, being aware of their finances. And we have a series starting called Dear Miss Mostly, and it's sort of an advice column. But one of the first stories we received from our readers was a woman whose husband had taken care of all the finances. He was the primary income in their household, and he suffered a debilitating stroke.
Oh.
And she knew nothing. And it took her like years to recover from that. In fact, she had to go to his place of work. She wasn't even aware of how much money he earned or what his benefit package was. It was quite startling. And, from somebody who's worked outside of the home, you think, oh, how could that be? But I know from other women talking that it's not an uncommon happening.
No, it's not. When I was working and doing some financial planning with people, with families and couples, I realized that there are a lot of women who don't know. But I mean, I get it. Often there's division of labor in a family. It just makes sense. You can't do everything. And if you're, managing what's happening with children, which is a huge thing, especially now, there's so much, and, running a household, it's difficult to also manage, the finances. But I think it's really important to at least understand it, even if you're not managing, if you're not the one paying the bills, or, anything to do with the banking, whatever, investing, you still need to know where things are, where you stand, what to do. Yeah, it's important.
Yes, no, for sure. And what is a key piece of learning that stood the test of time? Some advice that you've received?
Oh, I think, I'm extremely happy. Like, I'm a very happy person. And I really think it's because If I ever start to feel unhappy, I try to do something for somebody else. And, my one sort of piece of advice I would give is if you're feeling, disappointed in your life or unhappy with yourself, do something for somebody else. And it doesn't have to be big. I really believe that little things make a difference. And even if you just do something for one person one day, and brighten their day and surprise them somehow, or do something thoughtful or something that you would like somebody to do for you, do it for somebody else. And I think, you can change the world. So there you go.
Oh, that's great advice. And it's so true. I don't know if you've ever read the book, I think it's called The Happiness Factor, where you make a point of saying hello and smiling to everyone you meet. Well, of course, during COVID, that's been a little bit of difficult, but it really works. It is just amazing. And I got that from my daughter. My daughter is just naturally gifted at smiling and talking to people and finding out their name.
Neat.
It,
That's neat.
it just seems to be a real opener when you ask somebody what their name is. So acknowledging who people are is very special, and doing things, especially for them is.
And it's so small. It's so simple. Anybody can do it. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It doesn't have to be an expensive thing, but just you're right, just to acknowledge someone and say, like, I see you and I'm thinking about you. That's all it takes.
Yes. Well, it's been amazing talking with you.
I want to go for lunch when we can.
Yes. Well, we're going to have to get together since you're close to Vancouver.
Absolutely. And I'm going to follow your magazine. It
Oh,
looks so intriguing.
thank you very much. Well, we're so excited to be profiling you. And for all our listeners out there, the magazine is at45.com, ATFORTYFIBE. So please subscribe. The magazine is free. And we're looking forward to seeing all your art in the article.
Yeah. And check out Rome Gallery. They do
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful things for a lot of artists. Jen's very supportive. So I got to put in a plug for her.
It's an amazing platform. And so what is your website too? Your art is on romegallery.com.
That's right. Right now I'm on romegallery.com. I'm also on the Arts Whistler site. And I'm on Instagram as SheKlass, SheKlass, and Sherry Klassen on Facebook.
Perfect. Well, thanks again for sharing your talent and all your pieces with us. It's been wonderful to get to know you.
Thank you so much.